So I've literally just been chatting for like 4 minutes and I'm taking off my slippers. And I just don't feel like it makes any sense what I'm trying to say. I want to do this video. I'm just so nervous at the same time, and I don't know why, because there's nothing to be nervous about, but well, I'm going to be honest, doing this video takes me back to a place I don't particularly want to remember or go to, but there are reasons behind this why I want to do it. Like, nobody's putting a gun to my head making me do it. But yeah, so the reasons are, number one, I've been asked to do it, so why not? Number two is I want to start doing videos, I want to start doing YouTube, I want to start doing all of this, and I just know that this is going to be the first kind of question that I get asked. So if I put a video out, then I don't mind answering questions, but I don't need to keep going over it. I can just be like, here's my video, have a watch. And number three is to raise awareness. Like, the type of cancer I had is the most difficult to get diagnosed because it's a blood cancer. So if people can know the symptoms, then it just makes it easier to get diagnosed. This, obviously I did on my Instagram like 5 symptoms that I had, but this is more my cancer journey / story of how it all came about and what actually happened. I don't really know how to start it, but basically I would say the first signs I noticed was when I started getting infections and things like that kept reoccurring. I get these things on the side of my lip in the winter, and they're like split lips almost. They're not cold sores, they're like split lips. But basically it got really infected and it turned into impetigo. This was around, when would I say? This was around, oh, I know when it was. It was Easter bank holiday, so it was around this time last year. It basically went into impetigo and it went up here and all up my nose, and I had to go on to antibiotics for it. So that cleared and that was fine. I then started getting styes, and these styes weren't like just little styes, they were like massive, pussy, gross things, and I just kept getting them and I just couldn't seem to shift it. So I'm going to say that was round about the time that I was diagnosed. Not diagnosed, what's the word? I would say that was around the time that I started falling ill. That would be the time that I started feeling crap. I started feeling tired. I mean, I wouldn't say I was like really tired, but just a bit like not myself, a bit tired, but like, oh God. But at that same time, I was starting to go to the gym. I kind of started last year, like a kind of new year, new me. And I was going to the gym like 5 times a week. I was running and I was really into it. But I started getting really painful pains in my legs, like really bad. And obviously the first time I was like, okay, I'm lifting too hard because I'm such a weight person. But yeah, I basically thought, oh, I'm pushing it too far. So I started doing less and less, but the pain started getting worse and worse. And it's a really difficult pain to describe, but it was like tingling pains all over my body. Like it, I used to relax at night and it used to like kind of seize up and start. And so I stopped the gym. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like, something's not right. Like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I work in a call centre, so I then started getting really bad pains like around this area, and I obviously thought it was like muscular, like because where I'm hunched at the desk, I thought, oh, it must be muscular. But then the pain started coming here and then like shooting down into my chest. And then around this time, I would say this was about, I don't know, a month after. Yeah, a month or so after, like, I was just feeling more tired, like my pains were worse, like my legs were sore. I just felt really like run down and lethargic. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll go to the doctors. So I went to the doctors, kind of said how I was feeling, and I suffer with anxiety and depression. And so the first thing they kind of mentioned was, you know, like, you not getting out of bed because you're so tired, like, is that like related to anxiety and depression? And I actually hate it when doctors say that, because like, like, I'm going there for a reason, just don't link it to another. But I suppose they've got to kind of do all the checks. So, and I was like, no, like, this is definitely not that. Like, I'm literally so tired, like, come on, like. And then they basically said it was viral. They did all the checks. They were like, well, all your obs are fine. Like, I would just say it's viral, come back if it doesn't get any better. So I was like, okay. She said, this is probably the pains and that, or probably muscular pains. So I was like, oh, I have a muscular pain, so I'm going to go and get a massage. Now, if you know anything about massages and blood cancer, the thing you don't go and do is bloody go and get a massage, because basically if you've got a tumour, so the way that blood cancers, how can I describe this? The way blood cancers are spread around the body is the blood transfers it through the body, through your lymphatic system. So if you are going like that, you're basically encouraging that cancer to spread. So if you have any form of cancer, then you shouldn't go for massages, but especially if there's blood cancer, you should not do that, because you're literally just spreading it around your body. So that was probably the worst thing I did, and I went to go and get a massage with my mum, and I remember walking out of there and being like, oh, didn't really help that, like, I don't feel any better, like, I'm just in the same amount of pain. So yeah, I went and got that done. I then started to go off my food, or I can't remember if I actually went off it or I started feeling sick first. I can't exactly remember which one, but I either went off it or started feeling sick. So I just used to starve myself until like 2 o'clock. Like, I used to just go to work and not eat, because I just felt better. And if I did eat, I literally was like regurgitating, like, it's gross. So I was like almost trying to keep my food down. So everything started kind of getting worse, like the tiredness kind of getting worse. I was also noticing around this time I started losing weight. Not a lot, like a few pounds. And I put it down to me not eating, and obviously, yeah, I put it down to me not eating, but now looking back at it, that probably wasn't the reason why, but you know, you try and link things together. So I started going back to my doctors, and this is when I noticed that my tiredness really kicked in. So I was working, I think I just turned full-time, because I was actually previously at college, but I just full-time at work. But I used to come home from work and like get into bed at like 8 and sleep until like 7, 8 the next morning. Like, I was generally so tired, I cannot describe to you. I was just really tired all the time. So I went back to the doctor. I actually saw the same person I saw, because at my doctor's you get to see, well, the one I used to get, I've actually left there now, but you used to see kind of whoever was on duty. And she really didn't listen to me. Like, I was trying to explain, like, you know, I'm really not well. I don't think something's right. But I suppose in her defence, like, I got told when I was going through chemo, like, a doctor will go through their whole life not seeing a child, or I'm not a child, but a young adult or children or teenagers with cancer. So they never put it together. But she did all her checks, and I started saying, like, my tummy's really sore, and she felt my tummy, and she's like, it doesn't feel hard. Oh no, she did feel my tummy, and she said, oh, feels a bit hard, like, are you constipated? And I said, to be honest with you, like, this is a bit TMI, but my bowels haven't been, they've even been one way or another for quite a few months now. And she was like, all right. So she sat there doing her little nose, and she literally turned around to me and said, I know what's wrong with you. And I was like, oh, okay, what is it? She's like, you've got constipation. I was literally like, no. Like, I even said to her, I was like, I haven't got, like, that's not, like, this isn't that. Like, I've been constipated before. Like, this isn't the same. Like, I genuinely feel really tired. I'm losing weight. Like, my tummy hurts. I can't eat. I'm sleeping loads. And she was literally like not listening to me. And I was like, well, can I go for a blood test? I asked her, and she was like, well, why don't we wait until you next come back and then we'll do a blood test? And I was like, no, I'd just rather go and get, with me waving my pen around, I'd just rather go now and go and get a blood test just to like rule anything out. In my head, I'm thinking I've got, I don't know, like diabetes, or like an iron deficiency or something like that, or my what's it when your thyroids don't work properly? I thought it was something like that. So I went and got my blood test. A week later, I got a call from the doctors. And I was like, hello, you're right. They're like, oh, we're just ringing you, something's come back on your bloods. And I was like, right, okay. They were like, basically your infection marker is showing that you've got an infection. I was like, all right, okay. And I was like, that's a bit weird, isn't it? And she was like, well, it can happen all the time. You might have just a viral infection, like we said, but we're going to do it in a month's time and see if that's going up. And I was like, okay, all right. And then I think it was like a week later. I don't know I can't actually remember the exact dates and months and stuff. But about a week later, I basically woke up one morning and my legs were in absolute agony. Like I could barely walk. I still don't know if that is a symptom. Well, it must be a symptom. I still don't know why I had that pain. I've never actually asked the doctor. But yeah, I was in so much pain and I just got up and collapsed. Yeah, I just got up and collapsed, and my little girl, I was walking to my little girl's room, which at the time was like next door. So I walked there and I collapsed, and at this time my legs were in so much pain, and around this same time I noticed that my breathing and like everything was just a lot of work. Like I would run up the stairs at work and I was like almost holding my heart, like, oh my god, like I'm in so much pain, like I'm so out of breath. And I started like walking. I would walk like not far, like 10 minutes, and I would just be like I'm out of breath. So I went down to A&E and I explained, and I remember seeing the triage, and I explained that I'd been to the doctors and I'd just been feeling worse and worse. I described all these symptoms to them, and I remember the triage nurse saying, I think it's a triage, they call it, first person you see, I don't know if there's a lot we can do for you really, you're best going back to your doctors. But anyway, they did the obs and they noticed that my heart rate was really high. It was like 126 resting. So I was sat in A&E in the major bit where they don't really know what's up with you. I think they just stick you in majors because they're like, oh, we don't know what's wrong with her, kind of thing. And I was describing my symptoms, and a lovely doctor came around. I remember her to this day. She was really nice. And she kind of asked me what was going on, and I explained, you know, like, I've been losing slight weight, I'm really tired, I'm feeling very breathless and dizzy, I'm in so much pain all over my body. And I just said, you know, I just feel like something isn't quite right. And she said, basically your heart rate's really high, but your blood pressure's quite low, so we're going to do an ECG on you. So they did an ECG on me, and the ECG basically came back that something wasn't quite right. So she went down. I would like to mention she did feel me. I do remember them, like they do all their checks and they feel you. And she was like, I think it's something to do with your heart. And I was like, okay. So I went up to the cardiac department and I met a doctor called Dr. Bruce, and she basically said, yeah, my heart rate, the same thing sort of thing, my heart rate's not high, but your blood pressure's quite low, so she thinks that's why I'm fainting or feeling dizzy when I'm walking and out of breath, because basically everything's not levelling up quite right. So she diagnosed me with something called POTS, which is a tachycardia problem, and the symptoms were very similar. If I actually read POTS symptoms out, so let's go. POTS. So dizziness and lightheaded, fainting, heart palpitations, shaking and sweating, weakness and fatigues, headache, and chest pain. So they were very similar. I can see why she went down that route. And when I look back, I genuinely thought that like it was in my head, like I was going crazy, like all these symptoms, like no one was listening to me. I just felt so ill. And this is when I started getting really bad night sweats. Like my night sweats, actually I didn't notice them until this time. I did have them, but they weren't that bad. But I basically would wake up and I was like drenched in sweat. I was tired. I was signed off work because I generally couldn't do anything. I couldn't even walk 5 minutes down the road without throwing up, fainting, dizziness. Like it was really bad, and it was really tough. And the tablets that she gave me wasn't working. Obviously, the tablets weren't working. And so I decided to go. I don't know why I did this, and I wouldn't suggest anyone that is really ill to do this, but I decided to just have a break because I thought I had POTS. I thought I just need to learn with this. This is a new kind of disability, and I joined all these groups, and they were kind of saying how bad it was. And even though it didn't feel quite right, I was like, no, like, you've got to learn to live with this. Like, you can't let this take over your life. Like, you've just got to go. So I went to Scotland and to visit my family, and to say that things got really bad, they were really bad. While I was up there, I started noticing pains here, really sharp, intense pains. And if I was led down, they stopped, but as soon as I moved, they were just so sore. I actually rang my mum from Glasgow airport, and I said, Mum, I don't think I'm going to be able to get home. Like, I genuinely feel like I'm going to die. Like, I feel awful. And she was like, no, you just need to come home. And obviously she felt really bad because I was up there and there's nothing she could do. I had to carry all the bags. Like, there was no one else there. It was just me and my daughter Lana. Like, nobody else is going to help me. So I made it back, obviously, and I think it was about a few days later I woke up, and I'm not joking you, the pain was so sore. I remember going for a wee and waking in the morning, and I was screaming in agony. Like, I was like, oh my God, get me to hospital. Down to A&E. To cut a long story short, they thought it was my appendix. And when I went to see I then got put into a ward because they were obviously going to take my appendix out. I started explaining the symptoms to the surgeon. He was a bit unsure of it. He wasn't like sure. He said to me basically that normally when it's appendix, like, it's extreme, excruciating pain all the time, sharp, blah, blah, blah. But he was like, with you, you're led down, you're fine. And like, they weren't always bad. They were kind of really bad. And then sometimes they're okay. And then sometimes he was like, just all your symptoms don't match up to appendix. He was like, so I don't want to just cut you open. I just kind of want to see what's going on. And I was like, okay. And at this point, I was genuinely like, oh my God, like, he thinks I'm lying. Like, not lying, but he doesn't believe me. Like, he's thinking I'm making, like, not making this up, but this is all in my head. Like, these pains aren't my appendix. Like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm starting panicking, thinking I'm going crazy. Like, I genuinely was like, oh my God, like, I'm losing my mind. Like, I'm crazy. Like, I'm actually crazy. I'm nuts. And yeah, so they did loads of different types of scans. They did an ultrasound. The ultrasound didn't do anything. He then asked to see because I had an MRI for my heart. He then started seeing my MRI for my heart. He requested them, and he had a look at it, and he was a bit like, yeah, nothing. Actually, I can't remember. That's what did I have that MRI? No, we hadn't had the results back. Sorry, I completely lied there. We did an ultrasound, and he couldn't find anything. And he requested the MRI, but the results hadn't come back yet. He then sent me for a CT scan. And around this time, I'd been in hospital for a few days. But he sent me for a CT scan, and the CT scan basically showed a mass here, a big one all over here. And so he came to see me, and he put it bluntly. He said, you know, this isn't good news. It's either going to be the C word, cancer, or it's going to be TB. So TB is the thing that you have the shot for. It's very unlikely that you can get it, but you can get it. And sometimes TB is in your lungs, but you also get secondary TB, I believe, that can be in your stomach as well. I don't really know the ins and outs of it, but yeah. So at this point, I became really ill in hospital, really ill. I got sepsis. Now, sepsis on a normal person is deadly. Sepsis with someone with stage 4 cancer, I tell you what, it's one of the worst things I've been through. Like, I was so ill. My mum thought that was it. Like, obviously we didn't know it was cancer, and we weren't even thinking it was cancer, but generally the way I was throwing up, I was shaking, cold sweats a lot, and my mum obviously looked at me and thought, this is it. Like, she went up to my partner at the time and said, you need to make arrangements with Varrie. Oh God. God, it's so stupid, isn't it? Oh. She basically said you need to make arrangements with Varrie on what you want to do in regards to Lana, etc, etc. They pulled my whole family into a room and basically said that the same. They said the same to me, but they did a more in-depth version. That basically they kind of suggested if it was cancer, there wasn't. I'm so emotional. Oh, there wasn't a lot they could do for me because it had spread. They said it wasn't in the early stages. They then got a breast person to come through. They also get someone else from from like gynae bits. They got someone like that, and they basically said no, they don't think it's that type of cancer. So they had to do a biopsy, but because I was so ill with sepsis, they couldn't put me under until I had come through from sepsis. That was about 5 days, I think, fully, until I was under. And then went under. And yeah, they said basically it was like around my organs was like it was like a spray foam. And I believe I'm still not as clued up as I probably should be with someone that had cancer, but I believe when you have a type of blood cancer, your blood cells they diffuse and they almost make tumours. So they were all tumours around my organs. So they took a biopsy. They took a lot of biopsy. My stomach is pretty much scarred. They took 5 biopsies. And then on the 11th day I got let out, which was honestly the best thing. If you've ever spent any time in a hospital on a ward, especially ward 16, like, I love them there, but ward 16 at Bournemouth Hospital is basically everyone who has pooing or some kind of stomach problem. So it was literally poos and wheeze all night, every night. It was awful. And when you're in pain recovering from surgery, it's not nice. But yeah, so I then got called. I got let out on the 11th day. I got a call a week later to come in. And yeah, they pulled me into a room and they were like, basically, the surgeon who did it, who'd been working with me, was like, they wanted me to tell you because I've met you before and they don't want it coming from some randomer, but it is cancer and it's a lymphoma and they're pretty sure it's non-Hodgkins. They didn't know the ins and outs of what kind it was at the moment because they said it had to go for further testing, but it was cancer. And do you know what? Like, the crazy thing about this is I didn't even cry. I didn't get upset. Like, I was just so, I wasn't happy because I had cancer, but I was happy that I was finally diagnosed. I finally got the answer. Like, I wasn't crazy. Like, I was generally really ill. And so, yeah, I then got put into hospital it was about 2 weeks later. No, it wasn't. They sent me for a CT scan, I think, like a week later. And then literally within 4 days, I was in hospital. And they first said I was going to have a R-CHOP, which is the standard for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that would be as a day patient. So I just have to stay in hospital for 7 days. And then it felt like the bad news kept coming. So the day later, they came in and was like, we're really sorry, it is stage 4, because they had got my PET scan results. They said it is stage 4 and it's basically everywhere. And they were pretty blunt. They said it is everywhere. Said that I basically needed to go and have what's the word? I needed to have a more intense chemotherapy, because my type of cancer that I had actually had, so you have mutations, that's how cancer starts, it's a cell that mutates. I had 2 mutations that made it really aggressive, and each day that was going past, like it was literally killing me. They said within 2 to 4 weeks I would have been dead. Like, my organs were starting to shut down, hence why my heart was beating so much, because it was working so hard. And they said, I'm really sorry, you're not going to have time to freeze your eggs. Like, well, they didn't say that, they don't say that. He said we would advise strongly against it, because I believe it takes up to 4 to 6 weeks for you to freeze your eggs. Don't quote me on that. And I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, I started my treatment on November, I can't remember the date, but I started my treatment on November, and basically I had 21 days on chemotherapy and then 7 days off to give myself a break for four cycles. I also had 9 intrathecals into my back, because the scans shown that it had gone up my spine and into the membrane of my brain. I was so close that it hadn't gone into my brain, because it was just in like the liquid of my brain, so it was nearly there. But I'm so lucky it wasn't, because if it's in your brain it's a lot trickier, because if it gets in somewhere that obviously triggers control somewhere, it's lasting effects. Not only can it kill you, but it's lasting effects. So they gave me intrathecal, I can't even say the word, I'll call it IT chemo, into my back, which is like an injection. It's called a lumbar puncture. It goes into your back, and they basically, yeah, put the chemo in. But that is it. That is my cancer story. My last chemo was January the 1st, so January, February, March, April, May, June, I'm back. I'm about 5 months out, and yeah, that is my cancer journey.